Okay, so this time it will be the Sylvan Elves. I'll just set up the battle and then we'll have a look through their unit composition. Okay, so the Sylvan Elves. Now you'll notice that this roster is actually kind of limited. It looks small, and it is small in a way. You don't have a great deal of options, but what is here is very, very good. Now, where we'll start, I think we'll start off with these guys because you won't see these guys an awful lot. The Bjornings, I think that's how it's pronounced, are essentially sort of makeshift axemen, and if they can transform into bears if they're provoked long enough, it says there. But essentially, there's a possibility that they'll transform into bears. They're essentially axemen that have decent stats for a decent price, but you won't see a great deal of them, mainly because the elves have got another unit which is probably better in terms of an axeman unit, and generally the elven factions need to play more defensively because you have less men, and you really don't want to be outflanked because otherwise you're going to start to give up the advantage of your better men very, very quickly. So these guys are, an option for you if you're starting to run low on funds, because they are just about one of the cheapest units you have in your roster. But generally speaking, I don't think you'll see a great deal of these guys. The other thing, of course, is the Ents. Now, these guys are essentially kind of like Mumakil in how strong they are. And also, they share the Mumakil's weakness in the sense that fire ammo from both archers and siege engines will panic these guys and will do a great deal of damage to them. Now, you won't see these an awful lot. These can crash the game on big enough battles. They aren't horrendously overpowered to the point that Sauron and the spiders are. They're kind of on the same level as Mumakil, where they're very, very strong, and most of the time they will be banned, but you could see them. And if this is the case, you're going to have to use fire arrows and siege on them. You're not going to want to engage them directly in melee because they're just too strong. Moving through their regular roster then. First of all, we have Forest Wardens. Now these guys, their stats are pretty damn good. They're a pretty solid basic men-at-arms unit essentially. Stuff like the Gondor Infantry, we're talking about that sort of level. They are essentially, now the Sylvan Elves do have the same problem as the High Elves, and they are laid out in a very similar fashion in that their low tier units are basically mid-tier for the most part, and they have mid-tier and high tier, and all of it's very expensive, and all of it doesn't have very many men in the units. So you're going to have to keep that in mind when you make your pick. The Forest Wardens are... Don't be put off by the fact that they're the lowest tier melee infantry. Well, they're not, but the lowest tier sword and shield infantry you have access to, because they will still do a number on the enemy. Like, I've had them beat whole units of Dunland veterans and such easily on their own with many units remaining. They're very good in a siege for being your first line of defense, I feel. Just like the Sylvan Spearmen. Now, these guys are a spearman. They are the cheapest unit you have available to you as well, except for the... Well, actually, no, they are the cheapest. Straight up, I thought these guys were cheaper, but they're not. The Sylvan Spearmen can form Skiltron. They're pretty much your bog standard spearmen. They're very good, but they're also kind of expensive. Like 480 florins for a basic spear unit is kind of steep. But these guys are also very good. The problem that you will have with these guys more often than not is that they'll just be overwhelmed. Eventually, like, all the elven units can be overwhelmed without too much difficulty if you don't support them well enough with archers. And these guys are no different. They are the most fragile of the Sylvan Elves units, but nonetheless, they will hold the line for a surprisingly long time against overwhelming odds. So, they're very good. Next up, we have the Woodland Warriors. These guys, good against armor, well armored themselves, essentially the shock infantry of the Sylvan Elves, at least, as close to shock infantry as it will get. Their charge is decent, but mainly it's their anti-armor capabilities that these guys will bring to the table. They're pretty good at dealing with a charge from an enemy with counter charge. They're not bad at dealing damage to trolls, provided you can back them up with spears or something similar, or archer fire. One problem I would say about these guys, just like with all shock infantry, not the most hardy. You need to use these guys sparingly, otherwise they will die without paying for themselves, essentially. Next up, we have possibly the most important unit in the Sylvan faction, and that is the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. you cast your mind back to the High Elven overview, you'll remember the Eldar Enway Spearmen. These are essentially the same thing. They are, in my opinion, the two best spear units in the game because you can mass them to a point, and they just hold forever. Like their attack and their defense in particular is enormous. They don't tend to get too many kills when they're unsupported, but they will last forever. These guys will essentially give you the time you need for your archers, which are the main damage dealer for the Sylvan faction, the time they need to mow the enemy down. The other side of the coin, of course, are the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. Again, basically the Eldar Enway Swordsmen. These guys will get kills in melee, but the problem I find with these guys is they tend to die kind of easily. And I think this is because they have the two-handed sword, they don't have a shield. They will do a lot of damage to low-tier units. They will cut through things like Orc Band, Goblin Band, all that basic crap, the militia. Oh, excuse me. And, yeah, like I would say that these guys you want to charge in to support the spearmen when the spearmen are engaged. You don't want to send these guys off on their own because they can get surrounded, and they will start to die off more quickly than you would expect. But nonetheless, very high damage. Just use them sparingly. They are very expensive, so be careful with them. And now we move on to the Sylvan Elves' most important factor, and that is, of course, their composite bows. The Sylvan Elves are probably, in my opinion, the best composite bow faction in the game, and that's good because they don't have a lot of options when it comes to infantry, so their bows need to be on point. These guys, their worst archers essentially, have a missile score of 9. Now, these guys are not good in melee, it must be said. They will get caught out. They don't have a lot of armor themselves, so against other archers, if they're not in loose formation, they will get cut to pieces. But their missile strength of 9 for a low tier archer unit, this is a very cost-effective unit in my opinion. You won't see a great deal of them because people like more elite infantry, but if you're looking for an aspect of your army that you want to make more affordable, these guys will not let you down. Moving on to the Sentinels of the Woodland Realms, these are essentially the ranger units of the Sylvan Elves. They're lightly armored, but they're good. They can deploy stakes, they'll get a lot of kills. Missile score of 11 is very, very high. And they're pretty good in melee as well. They're not very heavily armored though, so you have to prepare to use them as light infantry, sort of flanking around, getting some hammer and anvils on foot. That's the sort of thing you're going to be using these guys for in melee. Just, the cloth is not heavy armor, so do be careful when you use them in melee, because every elf counts. And then of course we have possibly the most important unit in the faction overall, the Sylvan Heavy Archers. Now these guys missile score of 12. They're very good in melee as well. They're pretty much a functioning infantry unit in melee because of how good they are. They will get kills left, right, and center if you deploy them correctly. You need to defend them. You need to defend them with your spears, let them use up all their ammo, and then when the enemy is heavily bloodied by your archers, you can then send them in. They are very expensive. 780 is only dwarfed, I believe, by... Yep, only one unit is more expensive if you don't count the Ents than these guys, but they are the most important unit in your faction. You're going to need to get lots of skirmisher kills. You're going to need to play defensively as the elves basically all the time. You could try and be aggressive, but 9 times out of 10 that is going to backfire badly, and this is going to be the basis of all the damage you're doing. And of course we do have the Sindar Archer. These are essentially the general unit. They do have a missile score of 13, and they're in melee they are better, so they are basically individually better than the Sylvan Heavies. I would recommend having one of these guys. Their ammo lasts forever, so you're going to have a lot of arrows to lose, but do remember there's only 75 of these guys in the units. You could have 2, but you've got to remember again, lowering the amount of men you have even more may well result in you having too few elves to hold the line, so do watch out for that. And finally we have the Horse Archers. I did mention in the Eriador video that the Sylvan Horse Archers are expensive, and indeed they are, but they aren't actually too much better than the equivalent Riders of the Fold or the Grey Company. In fact, I think the Grey Company might even have some better stats on them, but in practice these things are different. So, like the Sylvan Horse Archers have better range. you know, these guys, you've got to be careful when you use them. You've got to make sure you micro them correctly. Otherwise, this is a lot of money down the drain that you could have spent on heavy infantry. If you use these guys correctly, though, they will get tons of kills. And they will also allow you to hammer an anvil onto your spears once they've used up their ammunition. You know, not overly expensive, I suppose, compared to some of their other units. And for cav, it's not bad. So use them if you can. But, you know, remember, you've got to have faith in your micro if you're going to use these guys to their fullest. So let's set up the army then, shall we? Right, we'll have 2 Sindar archers, I think. And then we'll have 4 Sylvan heavies, and we'll have 2... Usually I would say that this is too much in terms of skirmishers to make it a good battle, but for the sake of demonstration I will take 2 Sylvan heavy, well, 2 Sylvan horse archers. You'll notice as well that I'm already down a considerable amount of money just from this much, so even 20,000 might not be enough for me to get all of my units. I'm going to have 5 units of spears. I have 3 units of swordsmen, and what else shall I have? Can I have 4 units of woodland warriors? I can indeed. That should be very useful indeed. And, right, let's see. We'll have all of our archers upgraded. I do like the Sylvan Elves, but you just gotta play defensively as them to get the most out of them. And, you know, it doesn't always make for the most entertaining games, it must be said. But defensively in a siege, the Sylvan Elves are certainly one of the factions which will perform very well. And there we go. Let's see how we do. We're going to be playing on the Mirkwood map. So, let's see. Start deployment. I also think I don't know whether I prefer the look of the Sylvan Elves or the High Elves. Haven't really made up my mind on that. One thing that I would say is the Sylvan Elves have got a more... They're more favoured towards archers, certainly, and the one thing that they do miss is the extremely high-end infantry that the High Elves get access to, which of course is the Smiths of Eregion and the Mithlond Nobles. Now, where shall I deploy? I think we'll deploy just back a little bit, but just go straight for the middle. But yeah, they do miss the Mithlond Nobles and the Smiths because they don't really have a great deal of heavy infantry other than the Woodland Warriors and the Swordsmen, and they will do a lot of damage, they're just not very survivable. But fortunately, Elven Spears more than make up for that, in my opinion. This is going to be a pretty tightly packed formation, but it's going to be okay. We're going to have Axemen on the sides, so that we can charge out. There are Nazgul, Uruks, all kinds of nasties in the enemy army. Just in case, we'll have the Sylvan Heavy Swordsman back here. Sylvan Heavy Archers. And the Sindar Archers. I think maybe I'm a little bit densely packed, but we do have favourable terrain, which means my archers are going to be able to rack up the kills, hopefully. And we'll keep our cav together. We'll put them back here for now. Do we have our spears in guard mode? Because they need to be in guard mode. Yep. Okay, start the battle. So that's the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. That's Gundabad. And that is Mordor. Right, we're going to save my horse archers for towards the end. Just make sure we haven't got skirmish mode on any of these guys. So you can see my army is noticeably smaller than the Gundabad army of last time, for example. The units much smaller. Individually, though, each elf is worth, you know, a considerable amount of basic orcs. I do like the elven swords. They look very cool. The spear wall, when it's like the elven spear wall, just looks awesome as well. Just their spears and their shields, there's something about it. The elves are an unforgiving faction to play, though. Need to be careful when you're playing as the elves. Already they're in range. Elven archers also have got extremely good range. Particularly the Sylvan ones. The Sylvan elves, I guess most people would prefer the High Elves just because of their infantry advantage, but I am partial to the Sylvan Elves, just because like the enemy has to come to you. You can force them to come to you when you've got your archers out front. Perhaps cavalry is a bit of a problem for them, because you don't really want your spears to be running around after cav. Like, we're going to be getting tons of kills on the orcs. The Mordor army. There are Nazgul in the Mordor army, so we're gonna have to watch out for them. They could potentially cause some pretty significant damage, but well, in fact, there they are. Looks like we've already killed one actually. The power of the arrows. Dale is really the only faction that comes close to the Sylvan Elves when it comes to archers, and even then, well, and the High Elves obviously, but even then, you know, the Sylvan Elves just have the Sindar archers are what gives the elves their slight edge over the High Elves, and just in general, they're better than Dale. Not to say that Dale are bad, of course. Very capable archer faction, Dale. Well, they're about to attack. Right, let's charge in there. Get the charge off. Charge bonus. Charge into those Orc Raiders. Doesn't look like I'm going to get the charge bonus off here, but never mind. These Orcs are going to break pretty damn quickly. Uruks, you know, Uruks are a pretty damn good infantry unit, and they're just going to be dying on my Spearmen. Spearmen have taken a few casualties, but not many that I would need to be concerned about it. Let's start targeting those Orc Maulers. Trying to flank around. Ooh, skirmish mode, don't want that. They're going to reinforce their line. The Woodland Warriors are not going to falter though. Defeat is almost a certainty for the Uruks. The Spearmen are holding. These Orc Maulers are getting shredded by my Horse Archers. My Archers in general are doing a fantastic job. They don't run out of ammo easily either. And even when they do, they're very, very good in melee. The Orc Maulers continue to march towards my Horse Archers. I don't think they're actually going to make it. Just a perpetual motion of those arrows going into them. They're going to break before they make it. Pretty comfortably. Or are they? They might actually make it. How's my main line doing? They're not going to try and flank around, which is an odd one, but, you know, whatever. But now they're shaken. Are they going to break? I don't know. Lots of my arrows are hitting the hillside there. That's not exactly what I wanted. Let's get my Horse Archers out of there. Oh my. They appear to be trying to march in behind me. Okay. I'll just send a unit of swordsmen out there. My spears are starting to take casualties, but you've got to remember they only started with 121, so I mean it's not the end of the world. I think I'm getting a tremendous amount of friendly fire here. Oh dear. Let's get rid of those Orc Maulers. These raiders are not going to do too well here in melee against my swordsman. Right, we're going to need to send in some Sylvan heavy swordsmen over there, starting to thin out my woodland warriors a little bit. Those Orc Maulers are still not broken. Bit of a shame. Okay, let's get back in behind here. Oh, it looks like I've actually run out of ammunition on my horses, so that means I can use them as cavalry. Those guys are breaking. Let's just set you guys up over here. You guys need to reform with all due haste. Target the heavy goblins. Not quite in range as yet for them. Goblin Band. The Spears still haven't taken a great deal of casualties. Well, this unit's kind of taken kind of a lot, but defeat seems certain for them. Attack the Goblin Infantry. Right, let's get in behind the Gundabad army with my horses. The line looks thin, but it is solid. And this is really what the elves are designed for. This is the kind of battle you'll be fighting against the elves as the orcs, more often than not, honestly. Huge rout from the orcs there. Just don't have the stomach for this fight. That heavy goblin infantry is being absolutely massacred. Just give my troops a bit of a rally. You know what? I'm going to try and go for his general. Think we can do it? Seems like my formation is... Oh, no. My formation has kind of gone a bit awry despite my guard mode, but... I think maybe we're going to need to point our swordsman over here. Yeah, they're trying to go after my horses, I think. This unit here. Let's get you guys in. Let's get you guys firing over there. You guys firing over there. That unit's routing, so it's time for you to start firing in this direction. The Orc bodyguard taking a tremendous amount of damage. Looks like I'm going to slay the general. Hopefully I can. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to this time. I need to get out before I'm sandwiched. That's a lot of goblins, which I'm going to need to deal with. Still haven't run out of ammunition. Where are the Orc bodyguards? Well, they're not around there. Those are only Snaga stalkers that I was going to be sandwiched by, so maybe I shouldn't have been so quick to pull out. In fact, you know what? You go after them. You go after them. They are trying to flank around, so I commend them for that. But it's a unit of Snaga that's trying to flank around. Big amount of death there for the Snaga. Are they going to break though? That's the question. No, I've lost kind of a few horse archers. Well, they are flanking around, to be sure. Not a lot you can do about that when you're the elves though, unfortunately. Don't have enough men really to counter it. Let's pull back my unit of 13 woodland warriors. Right, those guys are going to get absolutely hammered. Where is that Orc bodyguard unit? Is that it? No, that's only Snaga stalkers. Well, those guys are not engaging my archers, and as a consequence they're being shot at point blank range and just getting absolutely massacred. Those Snaga should break, really. They shouldn't remain eager for long. Oh. Those Snaga are going to beat my horse archers in melee. How shameful. I don't think they have enough, really. Ah, we've run out of ammunition in one of our archer units, okay. Well, you can charge forward into the Orc maulers then. My spears could do with a little bit of relief, actually. You guys can come up, back up here. We have an archer unit in melee that we didn't really want to be in melee. Kill those Snaga. Okay, kill those Orc fellas. Defeat is ever more certain for the Orcs. Just starting to knock them down. Sindar archers, are these guys good for melee? They are. You get in there then. Yeah, we're really starting to rout them now. Charge into those Orc Marauders. Those are Orc Raiders. Okay, let me see. Time to go on the offensive. Yeah, their army is just routing.
For the moment, the fortune of battle goes our way. Let's pray it remains.
It's a pretty good charge. Should get a decent amount of kills on the Orc Marauders. Yeah.
Only half the enemy force remains. Our men have captured the enemy general.
Well,
Guard him well and make it so
it's a pretty brutal way to capture a general. Still firing missiles, and that's it. Okay. Yep, this is going to be it. Never really in doubt. I did take some losses, but again, basically only half units were lost. Except here, you know, that was a pretty severe loss. And my Woodland Warriors, the least survivable units, unsurprisingly did take some casualties. Got some chevrons though, got some good kills. My archers, of course, are going to have the most kills by a fairly big distance, I would have imagined. That unit of Orc fellas is not going to survive the day, I fear. And they're routing. Is this going to be it? I don't see any units that are still in the fight. Oh, Orc Marauders. Kill them. And the ones back here, I suppose. And there they go. It's going to be it. Surely that's it. Still be one unit around. Does not want to give up the fight, which is admirable. Well, that is a stream of routing orcs. Orc fellas, Orc fellas. Where are they? Ah, of course, the Nazgul. They aren't going to rout, are they? And there goes the Mordor general. Even the Nazgul are not going to be able to put up a decent fight against this much quality. Look at them, look. Dropping like flies. Unsupported Nazgul aren't going to get anything done. Where are the rest of the Nazgul? Over here? Yep, just the one. There he is. Getting beaten up by a bunch of archers. Oh. Well, he got a kill, but now he's about to get mobbed. Come on, just drop. Victory seems certain. He is being extremely... There we go. He was being ambitious. Let's see then. Yeah, 840 kills on one of my archer units. Enormous amount. The spearmen not getting a lot of kills, but then this is to be expected. They don't tend to do that. They're more for surviving. The swordsmen, where were they again? Swordsman got a decent amount of kills, this one in particular that I deployed early. The Woodland Warriors got a decent amount of kills, this one. Again, the earlier you deploy these sorts of units, the more kills they're going to get. But again, they're probably going to get battered. Like, this one with 56 is the Swordsman unit that got the most kills, and obviously it's the most damaged. Yep. Archers and Spearmen. Pretty much a more archer-focused version of the High Elves, and I like the Sylvan Elves a lot. Doesn't mean to say I'm actually very good with them in a practical situation, but there you go. And next up we have the final faction, and I can't do my good-evil switch anymore because the only faction left is a good faction, and it will be Arnor. So, I'll see you then.